This week in the conversation, I have the honor to receive two wonderful authors. I'll be speaking with Veronica Klein Barton. She's joining me from Orange County, California. And also, I'll be speaking with Bibiana Krall. She's joining me from Savannah, Georgia. So these are two writers co-wrote a wonderful fantasy novel titled Wicked Mist. But before we get into this interesting, wonderful story, let me just remind you it's important to continue to support this new novel, my new novel, Bittersweet Memories of Last Spring. And also if you have not gotten a copy, just go ahead and get one. And if you already have, also, you can always tell your friends and friends, and I'm pretty sure after you read the story, you will fall in love with it. So you wouldn't want to keep the story within yourself for yourself. You would want to share it with someone. And when you do so, don't give away your own copy. Encourage someone to get his or her own copy. And finally, I'm encouraging you also to continue to lend your support behind our literary show, The Conversation. The best way to do so is to subscribe to it. And if you do, don't forget to click the notification bell so that way every time a video is posted, it's going to you as soon as possible. And if you like this video, don't forget also to let me know in the comment box at the bottom of the video. So let's get started. Again, my name is Ardain Isma, and I'm here this evening with two important authors. I'm here with Bibiana Krall. She's joining me from Savannah, Georgia, and also Veronica Klein Barton, and she's joining me from Southern California. Interesting. So two interesting authors. We are going to talk about a joint project that they co-authored, a very interesting book titled The Wicked Mist. But before we get into The Wicked Mist, I'm just going to begin with Bibiana. Could you please tell the audience of CSMS Magazine who is Bibiana Krall?
Well, I'm a writer, obviously, because I'm here talking about my book, but I'm also a mom and a wife and a world traveler. And a lot of my stories either come from dreams or they also come from visiting really remote or historical sites. Sometimes when I read about a historical site, it doesn't really do a lot for me, but then I actually visit it and I'm totally inspired. Just the energy is still there, and I bring it back home and I sort of turn it into my own thing and I write about it. So that's me.
That's interesting. It's almost like me too, because I love to travel. And everywhere I go, I always get a pen. You would see a lot of pictures of me. You would see that a pen right in here in a notebook. I guess maybe that's what writers do, has that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
We do.
Okay, let's go to Veronica. Would you please tell the audience of CSMS Magazine who is Veronica Klein Barton?
Oh boy. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Isma. And hello, everyone. I'm Veronica Klein Barton, and unlike Bibiana, I did not start out as a writer. I am actually an engineer and finished my career in technology sales. So if you had a big company, I worked for large firms like SAP and Microsoft to, help you run your business. And
Wow.
so I had the opportunity to retire, and I've always been a lifelong reader of mystery stories. And so I kind of relaunched my career. So I'm kind of a relaunch kind of person. And wrote my first book when I was 60 years old, or just before I was 60 years old, published when I was 60 years old, and have started a whole new life. And this is my retirement. And I've been so fortunate in terms of meeting up with wonderful people from the writing community, primarily on Twitter, And Bibiana and I just happened to meet before the world shut down in the pandemic. And, I've written my cozy stories, but Bibiana and I have also been able to launch our haunted series, which Wicked Mist is our third book on that. So,
Okay, so if Wicked is the third one, what was the first one? Was
uh,
that,
the first
what was
one
the
was
title, the first
uh,
title of the series?
yeah, so the first one, actually, I have my little fan. We had some promos built. So Hearth Fires was our
Okay.
first story that we
Okay.
did in 2020. In 2021, we had Tangled Webs. And I don't have the Wicked Mist book, but Bibiana, maybe you do. There you
And she
go.
has it. She's showing it right
Yeah.
now.
So Wicked Mist is actually the third book in the series. And this all started with two women living across the country,
Yeah.
two totally different backgrounds. And, the world shut down. But Bibiana and I decided, let's launch a series.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what you call the dream team.
No, it was a totally dream team.
Yes.
And
Let me go back to Bibiana again. Okay, I realized that you said you a very deep central writing fellow. Could you please teach the audience what do you mean by that?
Oh, the Deep Center is actually an organization in Savannah that deals with social justice. And it's really, really cool because what my job as a fellow there was to design 12 classroom modules. So for 12 weeks, I taught a class after school to 16 tweens and teenagers from all over Chatham County.
Okay.
And basically, once they were finished, once I was done, these amazing writers were actually published in an anthology.
Oh,
But when I first got these kids,
Wow.
at least 3 of them, because we're talking about kids at risk, kids in
Right.
maybe households that aren't having them read or do their homework.
Interesting.
At least 3 of these kids, honestly, weren't even at 5th grade level. That when I was done with them, they were writers.
wow.
And you know what? Could you do me a favor? I'm pretty sure that you also organize just like a little competition with them and all that. If you ever, do something like that one day, and I will be delighted to welcome, one of your top writers and have him, show it and
Oh, that would be amazing. I know exactly who that would be. I know
you already
exactly.
know? Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this particular girl was, I think she was 12 or 13 years old, and she was one of those kids that gets bullied a lot. And her parents were immigrants.
Mhm.
And she really dealt with a lot of problems, with other people just didn't treat her well.
Mhm.
And her peers didn't treat her well. And when I met her, literally, this girl's head was down on the desk.
Mhm.
Talk like this, would cover her mouth and her face when she was speaking. I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get this kid to
Mhm.
stand up in front of everybody and speak? But when I was done, this girl was writing about this feminist warrior priestess that was taming dragons. And I mean, like, total 180. All she needed was that creative outlet.
Wow.
And you see, Veronica, this is why they say there's inside every one of us, there's a genius,
Mhm.
which
Oh, yeah.
remains dormant until something comes to just spike it.
Yeah.
Right.
And they say also education is the greatest gift a human being can have,
Mhm.
and deprive someone the power of education is ultimately a disservice to humanity.
Mhm.
Because the more educated we are, or the more educated a society is, the better, the stronger, the more cohesive it can become also.
Mhm.
So Veronica, let me ask you something, because I know on the project Wicked Mist, Veronica, and there's something really that catches my attention when you refer to magical realism. Immediately what comes to mind is the godfather of that, is Gabriel Garcia Marquez, who is one of the best, in this particular genre in literature. So why you blend that all the little bit of things and just mixed, including magical realism. So why is that?
Well, I think, with the 3 books that Bibiana and I have written in the Haunted series, for each year we chose a theme. And so in the first book with Hearthfires, we had a Ouija board. But
Okay.
if you look at it and the stories, I mean, we don't bring Ouija into, the center core of the story. I mean,
Right.
it's there, but it's just kind of it's hanging in the background.
Right.
The same with Tangled Webs, spider webs, but it's really more of this psychological play, in terms of how people interact and all the societal norms and, everything that's playing. It's very web like, if you will, and can trap people in a certain position and what have you, and cause many problems. And the same with Wicked Mist. It's I think there's always something kind of in the background of all of us in terms of any action that we take, or in the stories, it's whether you're a witch or you're a ghost or you're a roach, and there is a roach in the story. There's just this like myth background, and the magical realism is that, I think personally, I believe everything that we do in our life is magical realism. And, because we don't know what's going to happen. And, it's up to us as a person to kind of, bring out the reality and live the reality. And sometimes, we get things that are totally unexpected that happen in our lives. So.
True. There's one thing also, just before I get to Bibiana, Veronica, and you mentioned that you had fallen in love with British murder mysteries.
Yes.
And that's what ultimately, pushed you into the arm of Bibiana.
Yeah, exactly. No,
and writing this wonderful story. So, how did you really come to fall in love with British murder mysteries?
Well, I think, I grew up with, reading and loved the mystery genre from day one. I had Trixie Belden and Nancy Drew were, good girlfriends of mine in terms of the books. And then I found Agatha Christie. And Agatha Christie was, I guess my queen of mystery, if you will. And I just absorbed everything, in terms of her Miss Marple series, the Hercule Poirot, just Tommy and Tuppence. I mean, just all of her different characters. And it just, to me, it was always an escape. And I could read those stories over and over again and never be bored.
And this would be a clear summary of the Wicked Mist, Bibiana, if I want to go to you now. Okay, when I'm looking at the Wicked Mist, I also can see in the shadow what has become a new trend in fantasy, which is dystopian fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Is there an element of it? Any too?
I think there definitely is some. I mean, because of the fact that each one of these books has 6 stories in it, and we choose a different city as or a different part of the world to put our background in. What we do is we do research, and what is it do you think of, but what is it that you find? And if we find something that really kind of tunes into that theme that we have, it just starts, you know how it is. You get into the research and all of a sudden you're absolutely in love with the most random little thing, and you take it all the way to the end of the beach. So As far as the dystopian, to be honest, the dystopian often is that someone, a character in each story, is tempted or challenged somehow. And the dystopian element, along with the magical realism and the fantasy, comes along when either the person decides to embrace their negative feelings or decides to ignore something, that we'll say the elephant in the room. And that is often where that catalyst comes in, and we suspend your belief system just long enough for you, the reader, to actually believe anything. And I'm telling you, we've covered it. Anything that happens on that next page. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
And especially when you're doing a project like this with your good friend Veronica, right?
Right.
Bibiana, let
right.
me ask you something. Just because you're saying that, let me ask you something here.
Sure.
Okay. Fantasy, as a genre, is one of the most popular ones in literature. So why do you think so many people are so fascinated about reading fantasy stories? Is it because of the great escapism that it offers to people?
Well, I think, if you look at fantasy, we'll talk about Game of Thrones for a minute. And Game of Thrones, as I was watching the TV series, because I've done extensive research on the Picts, I actually started recognizing some of the maps that were actually used in some of the frames, and even some of the names of the countries were making me laugh because they were like sort of subversions of the actual real map that I've seen somewhere. So I think what really makes fantasy very, very intriguing to people is that you have those historical elements mixed with fairy tale elements. And then you also are sometimes able to fantasize yourself as the dragon, or fantasize yourself as that, the warrior.
Right.
And what happens is you're able to leave this plane for a while, and the laundry piling up and the bills, whatever, now you're fighting dragons. You don't have time for that right now. So I think if you allow yourself to open that door, it will take you far, far away from here.
Sometimes I want to see, just take me there,
Just get me out of here, man. Yeah.
Is that the same thing for you too, Veronica? You think the escapism that it offers, is very important in human life, in our lives?
No, I totally agree. And I think too, with the time of the year, I mean, we're now just getting into fall and autumn, and hopefully over the at least here in Southern California, we had horrific heat waves this summer.
I know.
So,
I heard about it.
the weather's growing a little bit colder, and you can see in my background, we totally get into the Halloween spirit. So I have my witch's tree back here, and
awesome.
all kinds of lights and around the house. And I think it's one thing too. I mean, I think the escapism and just with the change of seasons, I mean, we're entering the final quarter of the year, and this is holiday season, and it's my favorite time of year. And it's, after all we've been through and what have you, this is a time to celebrate and just kind of take it easy, take a deep breath, and just have a little fun. I mean, there's so much going on in the world right now that I think a little escapism and a little fun and humor and, just lighten up a little bit. And
certainly I can find that in Wicked Mist.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, they're kind of quirky stories, and some are more haunting than others. And I always have the job in our series. I bring a little humor in there. So I'm a big Twilight Zone fan. And so I'm going to bring in a little weirdness into the book. But I think, that's all part of the Halloween and the escapism. It's not just scary stories or haunting stories. It's just the weird and the macabre and the strangeness. I mean, you don't have to have like, zombies and, heads being torn off or anything to be
It's a bit
scary.
too
I mean, I
ugly.
think a lot of everyday occurrences are very scary, quite frankly.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So.
Exactly. Wicked Miss has one protagonist in the story. Just one?
Six.
Six
Six.
protagonists.
Yeah. Yeah.
Six totally separate, completely different tone, different everything, but the theme is the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. So I'm not asking you to tell the plot now, but would you please give the audience a little bit, just a sneak preview, Bibiana? Not the plot.
Well, it is six different short stories, and the way we read our short stories is really we novelize a short story. So we have a beginning, middle, and an end. And we always put a plot twist at the end to really feel very satisfying. But the one that really just grew on me was Nino. And the reason that Nino grew on me is the story itself was born from looking at photographs of a really famous Polish photographer who went to a forest in Japan and took pictures after the first snow. And I was so mesmerized by these photos. I wasn't even thinking of the story or anything, that I sent him an email. Didn't know this guy from Adam. And he's super famous. And he wrote back the next day and so we were talking, about these crazy pictures. And he's like, you have to go there. I'm like, dude, it's the middle of the pandemic. I can't go to Japan right now. But Nino came from really this energy that I felt through his photographs. But on top of that, a fear that I had when as a little kid, from this crazy junk man we used to have that came to our house, who had naked baby dolls nailed to the top of his truck. And I was scared to death of this dude. And he was, my parents say he's fine, whatever, but I'm like, no, there's something not right here. And I combined those, and that's how Nino kind of arrived. But it's certainly about haunted dolls, but it's also about letting go, and it's also about the power of love.
Power of love. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And on that note, I just want to go to Veronica. Listen, it says that to write a compelling fantasy story, as a writer, you need to have the skill, what you call the world building skill. Is that true, Veronica?
No, I do believe that. And, as Bibiana said earlier, I think both of us are kind of world travelers, and I really gain a lot of inspiration for my stories from my travels. I mean, there's nothing like it, to go to another country and just observe the people, learn the architecture of the buildings and the history and what have you. And, I think in Wicked Mist, the one story that really stood out for me is called Area 58. And it's the oddball story in the collection. But it's very scientifically based. And I think that's where I drew on kind of my science and engineering background. And it is, you mentioned, a dystopian type story, and it is actually, because it kind of draws in a very, eclectic and humorous way, all of the different events that have happened to us all over the last 3 years. And, all of us have kind of binge watched TV and what have you. And my favorite this past year was Ancient Aliens. And so I really drew on, the science and the dystopian feel, and, just kind of really just let it loose, and I still remember, when Bibiana and I always kind of trade stories. And when I sent her Area 58, I was like, well, here you go, and she was like, oh my gosh, after she read it, because it was the oddball one, as I said, but, it fits, because I think we're all, you never know what you're going to get every single day when we wake up. First thing I do is check Twitter or check the news. You're like, okay, what's happened today? What do I have to
So
deal with?
this series will contain approximately 4 books, right? And this is the third one, right?
Yes, so we have 3 books published, and we're kind of, working on book number 4 in the series. So the way that we've done it to date is we publish every year on Labor Day. So that's kind of
every year on Labor. But no, why is that? Why it has to be published on Labor Day?
Well, I think, psychologically, it's like September, and, let's start the haunted season, and yeah. So we publish, on Labor Day in September, and, for, 50 some odd days, that's all you get from Bibiana and me, is just all kinds of tweets and posts about the story and the books. And
interesting.
But
so how do you coordinate? Because I know that there's another aspect in the publishing world. So getting the book ready is one part of the story, but getting it into the hands of readers is another part, and it's not an easy part also. But I mean, 2 powerful women can make it a little easier. Could you please, Bibiana, share that little secret for the rest? A lot of indie writers out there, they don't really get that. Could you, Bibiana, share a little bit of your own experience?
Sure. Well, because of the fact that Veronica and I live across the country, I haven't seen her for, I think, a year and a half. And in a couple of weeks, I actually get to go out and attend a conference with her in Southern California. So we are going to see each other in person. But normally what happens, especially when we're in what I call the incubator phase, which is we have like the little chicks, and they're all under the heat lamps, the weird chicks as far as these books go. But she draws up 3 ideas, I draw up 3 ideas, and then we basically ping pong them back with each other on the phone, or via text message, just whatever's working for us.
Right.
And then we start developing them. So we each take charge of 3 of these little children, and we start developing them more. And once we get them to a point where they're a cohesive story, really cohesive, and not full of misspellings, and I can't handle that anymore. I used to be a little easier with that, but if it's hasn't been edited, I don't want to see it yet.
Really?
But
that's your baby also.
Right, it's my baby, and I still don't want to see it until it's at least relatively clean. So what we do is we swap the stories. Like I send her mine, she sends me hers. We give each other very honest feedback. And if something's really not working, or if something's really exceptionally cool, then we get to have like a, fun sort of over the phone party. And then when we're really ready, when we feel like they're as tight as they can be, then we send all of them to our editor collectively. And then he goes through everything, and then sends back his suggestions. And then we pick through them one more time. And then we have the final. And then as far as the publishing aspects of it, the delivery to, all of the different places, I actually take that over myself and do that from my desk, because, I before I met Veronica, I'm not sure how many titles I had out there, but I'd been doing this for a while.
How many titles?
And well, I have 28 fiction titles right now.
28.
28.
Wow, you're a seasoned writer. You're not just a little novice kind of thing.
Right. This is it. I'm not Vanilla Ice. I've been doing this a while. but what we do is we deliver it cohesively the same way.
Mhm.
We have very specific aesthetic guidelines that we use, and we have an amazingly talented cover designer that is comes from Veronica's side. So she and I basically, you know, we cover the finances on both, we cover the time on both, and you know, it's a team effort all the way
Of course, I
through.
can
So
see
whatever
that.
she's good at, she does.
Mhm.
Whatever I'm good at, I do.
Right.
And we come together as people who respect each other to get it done. So it's like you have to go beyond ego, you have to go beyond all those other things, and just like really see that you need each other to be focused,
Mhm.
and you need each other to be, you know, open and communicating. I mean,
Right.
I couldn't think of a better person. I never
You hear that,
imagined.
Veronica?
No,
That makes
no,
you
Dre,
feel
no,
so
good
proud,
job.
huh?
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
thank you.
I never imagined
Wow.
that I could have this kind of working relationship with another person who was also talented, creative, you know, amazing, all that other stuff. Because usually you run into this like sort of creative abyss, but with her, none of those problems. It's just like boom, boom, we know what needs to happen, and boom, boom, we get it done. And it's amazing.
We could talk forever, you know.
Mhm.
But yeah, Bibiana, let me ask you something here. If I were to ask you who you would consider as your favorite author, it doesn't have to be an American. The favorite, which one? Oh, who?
It has to be an American?
It doesn't have to be an American at all.
Oh, good. Okay. I would have to say, you mean like of all time, or this week, or last
All
week?
time, hands down, you
Oh,
know.
how am I going to do that? How
I
am I
know.
going to
Every
do
time I ask
that?
this question, oh gosh.
Because I feel like I'm cheating on like 10,000 other people that are like amazing. Well, I would have to say, you know, the book that probably influenced me the most as a young person, you know, like a young woman, I would have to say was Wuthering Heights, Bronte.
Okay.
So, and the reason I say that is because in my mind, you know, I'm a young girl from Michigan. I don't know what a moor looks like, you know, like what the heck is an English moor, and why are there people wandering around in it in the mist, you know, like what's going on there? And so there's just a lot of things that were sort of in a it was hard for me to sometimes mentally have that image. So when I grew up and started traveling and saw the English moor and saw the fog and saw these old buildings built in, you know, 14th, 15th century or whatever, out of stone, these giant houses coming out of almost kind of like Nowheresville, I could finally see it all. And it just really, I don't know what it did, but it cemented that sort of love for the Gothic, you know, like Oscar
You're talking about
Wilde.
the English countryside, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Like if you're away from the city and you happen to put on your sweater or your jumper, as they call it there, and you take a walk by yourself just as the sun is coming up or whatever, I mean,
Wow.
you stop feeling time and you start going back into the past, and it's spooky and it's cool and it's Gothic
and cool at the same time.
yes,
And inspirational also, right?
yes, yes. So I would have to say Wuthering Heights is the book, but my favorite author currently, because I just have to, is Neil Gaiman. And the reason I say Neil Gaiman is Neil Gaiman manages to take the macabre, the horror, and the magical realism and weaves them together into his very own extremely peculiar and specified style. And there's nobody else in the world that can do Neil except for Neil. And I admire the heck out of that. I admire that.
Because of that, its uniqueness. And Veronica, same thing. Your favorite writer?
I have to go with Dame Agatha Christie. I mean, she's the one that kind of stole my heart, and really just the whole, you know, cozy mystery genre just just captured my imagination. And, when I had the opportunity, and had decided to go, on my second career, going into the writing, there was no doubt, that cozy mystery was going to be my genre, and that's just it. I do add in my cozy series, where it basically takes place kind of in a castle, and we deal with royalty and actors, and really get into the luxury lifestyle. So I do have to give, in terms of a contemporary author, Julian Fellows, who does the Downton Abbey series, and others. I think that's kind of what launched my writing career. Is when season 6 of Downton Abbey ended, I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do on Sunday nights? And so that's why I started writing my series.
Exactly.
So,
A last question. Let me go to Bibiana. It's not easy for writers to collaborate in one specific project. So if you were to give a lesson, at least some lesson, to a writer out there, or group of writers who would want to embark upon a journey just like you and Veronica, to be so successful at it, so what lesson would you give to them?
I think what I would tell them, first of all, is trust your gut. When someone says to you, I want to work with you, what's your first reaction? What is your very first reaction? Secondly, would you want to spend a month with this person on a haunted island? Because that's kind of what we do, especially for the month where we're doing the incubator. We're on a haunted island with each other, and a lot of other stuff takes like a sort of a backward moment. So the question is this someone, whoever this is you're thinking about, is this someone that you would want to make a haunted baby with? And if it's not, or a romantic baby, or whatever it is that you're doing, whatever genre, if you have even a little polka dot in that gorgeous meadow, even one, walk away. And the reason I say that is because it's going to be hard anyway. So it's got to be like all good, all pistons forward, So if you get that little niggle, that little bit of a knee jerk, you have to think about it even for a second. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Okay. Is that the same thing? Veronica? Any lesson in different?
I think I'm going to come from it from the business perspective. You better, choose someone that has a very similar work aesthetic. So if you set deadlines and set goals and what have you, you want to make sure that the people or person that you're working with, is right there with you. And because there's nothing more frustrating. You get all your work done, and the other person lags behind, or what have you, and because things move so quickly, a year goes by pretty much in a snap, and pretty much Bibiana and I have, our schedules kind of choreographed, month by month, in terms of, okay, this is what we need to be doing, and and we know exactly when crunch time is, and and you have to really make sure that the person that you're working with, is on the same page with you. And especially because we're in a virtual environment right now, and Bibiana's in Savannah, I'm in Orange County, different time zones and what have you. But, we keep in touch almost daily, actually. And, and you have to be, have that same kind of business commitment, because we have milestones, we have budget, we have schedule, and you have to be willing to stick to that and make sure that the other person is too.
Exactly.
So, so
on that wonderful note, I'm just going to say it's been more than a pleasure to
Well,
have
thank
with me this
you.
evening in a conversation two wonderful authors.
Thank you.
Bibiana Krall, joining me from Savannah, Georgia, and Veronica Klein Barton, joining me from Southern California, from Orange County.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No, we really appreciate it. Thank you. And everyone have a very happy Halloween and a very happy holiday season.
Hey!